This experience happened in 1998 when my father was diagnosed with lung cancer. I was working out of town and was unable to return home immediately to care for him. I was very busy at work and I did not have much vacation time available to care for him. Finally, my family decided to have a family caregiver take care of him. I would call my father every day to ask how he was doing and to talk to him. But I knew I couldn't really care for him. I couldn't even see for myself how he was doing or know if his condition was being treated effectively. It made me very heartbroken and helpless, and I felt how powerless I was. I could only hope that he would be strong enough to get through this period. I remember when I was young, my father would often take me to the park to play, teach me how to swim, ride a bike, etc. He always guided me patiently so that I would learn to persevere and work hard through constant failure. Even when I fell down, he would not worry too much like other parents, but would encourage me to try again. These experiences gave me a deep understanding of my father's strength and perseverance, and taught me to face difficulties with courage. Even though I am not as strong as my father, his teachings have always inspired me to overcome many difficulties and become a stronger and more confident person. One day, I got off work very late and I was feeling very tired. I had just arrived home to rest when my head suddenly started to spin and my vision began to blur. I swayed and tried to keep my balance, but I eventually passed out on the floor. When I woke up again, I was back in the backyard of my father's house. I suddenly felt a strong energy around me that made me a little uneasy. I turned around and saw a familiar figure. It was my father. I was surprised because I had never met a spirit before, let alone the spirit of my father. He looked much younger. He was still wearing that black jacket that he loved so much. I was so shocked. I couldn't believe my eyes. He looked so peaceful and serene. I didn't know what to do. My father's spirit communicated with me very gently. He told me that he was fine now and not to worry about him because he was now free from pain and distress. Hearing my father's words, my heart began to become calm. I no longer felt fearful and worried, but felt relieved. My father said to me, "He is coming home." I looked at him curiously and said, "Isn't this your home?" He was silent for a moment, then smiled softly. Then he told me that this was only the place where he had lived, and that heaven was his true home. I pleaded with my father, "Dad, can you take me to see heaven? I want to see your new home, and I want to see that beautiful world." My father smiled and replied, "Of course you can, follow me." With his finger guiding me, I felt my body and my father's soul ascending into the sky together, and the physical sensation was not unpleasant, but rather relaxing. I felt like my body was lifted by an invisible force, and then I left the earth and came to a peaceful and tranquil world. I opened my eyes with a jolt and was amazed by the sight before me. I saw a glorious golden city. The sky was light blue, and white clouds floated leisurely by. There were many beautiful buildings in the city, and there were no noises, only harmonious music. "This is heaven." My father's voice broke my imagination of this wonderful world. I saw a huge door, a tall and gorgeous golden door. The door was cast with countless details of exquisite patterns, as if to show people its splendor and dignity. An angel dressed in a white robe with beautiful wings approached us, smiling and greeting us. She took us to a room next to the main door. In the center of the room was a large round table with a thick book on it, which seemed to be a record of my father's life. The angel told us to sit down. I saw a huge screen on which a replay was playing. The replay showed the good things my father had done. He cared about others, was passionate about public welfare and had helped many people, which made me feel very proud and touched. The angels present told me that these things were remembered in heaven and that his good deeds gave him a better life in heaven. A few of the scenes were particularly impressive to me. One of them was when I was about 7 years old. We ran into an old grandmother on the street whose face was full of anxiety. The grandmother told us that her wallet had been stolen by a thief, leaving her very anxious and helpless. Seeing the grandmother's situation, my father did not hesitate to take out all the cash from his own pocket and give it to the grandmother and use his cell phone to call the police. Afterwards, my father took me along to visit the grandmother, gave her something and told me, "We have to help others to the best of our ability so that our world will be a better place." I was deeply touched by his words, and I think we should all try our best to help people who need help. My father's actions made me feel very proud, and the care and kindness he showed is an example I will learn and pursue throughout my life. I also saw another scene. When my father was young, he used to sponsor an elementary school located in a rural area. This elementary school did not have enough funds to provide a good education to the children there. My father believed that these children should have the opportunity to receive a better education, so he decided to fund this elementary school. He did not tell anyone, including family and friends, and did not expect anything in return. He started from a good heart and quietly helped these children. The father gave his time and money to this effort, but he didn't care about that so much as he wanted to make sure that these children got the opportunities they deserved. I realized I didn't know enough about my father, and I was deeply in awe of all the good he had done and the hardships he had gone through. Finally, I asked the angel, "Can I stay here with my father?" The angel gently shook his head, gazed at me fondly, and said, "My son, your time has not yet come. You still have many things to accomplish, and many people need your help and company. You cannot give up on this wonderful world because your mission is not yet complete." After listening to the angel's words, I felt a sorrow in my heart, but at the same time I understood more about the meaning and value of life. I began to understand that although I could not be with my father, I had other important responsibilities and obligations to fulfill. The angel took my father and me to the entrance of heaven. The angel said to me, "It's time to say goodbye to your father." I felt a wave of sadness come over me because I knew this would be the last time my father and I would see each other. I looked at my father and tears slipped down my cheeks. My father gently wiped away my tears with his hand and said gently, "Don't be sad, my son. We will meet again, and I will be here waiting for you when you finish your mission." I nodded my head and held back my tears with all my might. My father hugged me tightly. I felt the warmth and comfort of his body, as well as his strength and determination. In my father's embrace, I felt an incomparable happiness and satisfaction, as if all the pain and difficulties were smoothed out in this moment. My father looked at me fondly and said, "I have to go, but I will always love you. Remember, I will always be by your side, protecting you and supporting you, no matter what time it is. Live your life well, pursue your dreams, and be a kind and worthy person." Listening to my father's words, I felt infinitely strong and inspired, and I decided to always be strong and brave to face the challenges and tests of life, and become a person who would make my father proud. Finally, my father gently kissed my forehead and waved his hand to me. The moment I saw my father walk through the gates of heaven, I was overwhelmed with emotion. I saw him filled with an overwhelmingly pure energy, and his clothes instantly turned into a robe of pure white color. My father turned to me and smiled, his face filled with joy and contentment. He told me that he was going to walk into this wonderful place and watch over us with the angels. I felt overwhelmed with sadness. I didn't want him to leave me, I wanted to be with him, never to be separated. But my father told me that my time had not yet come and that I needed to go back to earth to continue my life. He said he would always be by my side to watch over me and protect me until I could walk through the gates of heaven as well. I nodded my head in understanding. But I couldn't stop the tears from flowing down my face. The angel told me, "It's time for you to go back, too." I began to feel heavier and heavier, like a heavy stone, falling rapidly toward the ground. I tried to struggle, trying to resist this invisible force, but everything seemed so powerless. I felt the air around me become thicker and thicker, and it became extremely difficult to breathe, as if the whole world was blocking me. Gradually, I began to feel the light and sound around me, and I knew that I was back. I tried to sit up, but my whole body felt unusually weak. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. I was thinking, why am I having such a strange dream? Just then, my cell phone suddenly rang, and the sharp ringing startled me. I had a bad feeling in my heart. I heard my brother's voice, and he told me that my father had just died, but I hadn't been answering his calls. The news hit me like a heavy hammer blow to the heart. I was not dreaming, I had really seen my father. It made me feel very sad and self-conscious. I can't imagine what his last moments were like. He left me just like that, without any warning. Whenever I thought about it, my heart felt like it was being torn apart with pain. I kept asking myself if I could go back in time, could I do something to make him less alone when he left? I know that my father is doing well in heaven now. But I often blame myself for not seeing the last of him. Family members are the most valuable assets in our lives, but many times we overlook them because of our busy lives and work. However, when we lose our family members, we realize how important they were in our lives. We will regret that we did not spend more time with them, did not say, "I love you," to them, and did not share our life with them. Therefore, we should always remind ourselves to cherish our family members around us and not to regret until we lose them. We should take time to spend with our family members, communicate with them and listen to their hearts. We should also show our love to our family members and let them know how important they are in our hearts. In this way, even if we lose our family members one day, we will be able to recall with peace of mind the good times we had with them and will not leave any regrets or remorse. I was born into an ordinary family and had a happy childhood. My father was a hard-working man who ran a small store and worked hard for the livelihood of our family. My mother, on the other hand, was a gentle and virtuous housewife who took care of our family and often cooked delicious meals for us. However, a very painful event happened to my family when I was 10 years old. My father was taken away by a sudden illness and my family was plunged into great grief and heavy financial burden. My mother took on the burden of the family and she had to work hard to support us. She took care of me and my siblings while running our family's small store and making sure we had enough food, clothing, and shelter. For me, this was a very painful time. I missed my father terribly and had no way to help my mother. I felt very small and unable to take any responsibility. But my mother always encouraged me and supported me, telling me she loved me and believed I could be stronger and more confident. It wasn't until that day, when I had my near-death experience and went to heaven, that I truly understood the meaning and value of life. I realized how important my family and my mother were, and that I had to go back to Earth to take care of her and help her through this difficult time. Although my father has left us, his spirit and his love for our family will always be there. I feel that I have grown into a more mature, responsible and compassionate person who is able to face and overcome any difficulties and challenges. The day the near-death experience occurred, I was playing soccer in my backyard. The sky that day was very special, as if the whole world was tinted with a layer of gray. The sky was thick with clouds that blocked the sunlight. I saw a thunderbolt. I did not expect to be struck, but the next moment a blinding light illuminated my entire being. My body instantly went numb, and I felt a strong current pass through my body, and my muscles and bones felt like they were being blown apart. I suddenly felt as if I was no longer in my own body. My vision became blurred, and everything around me became fuzzy and unreal. I felt myself rising upward, gradually flying off the ground and getting closer to the sky. Just when I was feeling very panicked and confused, I saw a familiar figure. It was my mother, who was running out of the house at that moment, looking at my body in horror. My mother saw me lying on the floor and her whole body was dumbfounded. Her eyes were filled with panic and helplessness, as if she had seen the worst. She desperately called out my name, but I was no longer able to answer her. I looked into my mother's eyes and felt a stab of pain. I knew I couldn't worry her anymore, but there was nothing I could do at this point. I felt my mind twist painfully in helplessness and guilt. Suddenly, I felt a strong suction, as if something was trying to grab me and take me away. I followed that force and found a demon lunging at me. The demon was very large, with a tall body flapping its huge black wings in the air. An evil aura emanated from his body. His face was terrifying, a pair of blood-red eyes shone with a cunning light, and the demon's mouth showed sharp, sharp teeth. His body was wrapped in a black cloak, making him appear even more mysterious and terrifying. The whole man gave off an aura of darkness that was impossible to escape, as if the only thing in this world was the existence of demons. Just when I felt helpless, an angel appeared. He blocked the demon's attack with one hand, and then held me in his arms. A thrilling duel took place between the demon and the angel. I felt my body start to shake continuously, as if I might be rippled by this duel at any moment. Finally, the angel let out a loud and clear cry, and then took me away from the place. I looked down at the demon below and felt a gentle glow surround my heart. The angel led me through a white tunnel and then into heaven. The place made me feel incredibly comfortable and relaxed. The sight in front of me was also very shocking. I saw beautiful gardens and majestic white castles. I felt a hand hugging me from behind, and I turned around and it was my father. He was wearing a long white robe and looked very young. He had a warm smile on his face and my mood instantly became pleasant. For many years, he had been the closest person to me, but a few years ago he suddenly left me. Now, in this beautiful and peaceful paradise, I was surprised to see him again. I hugged him tightly and felt his warmth and love, as if all the pain had disappeared. I hugged my father tightly, not wanting to lose him again. He gently stroked my hair and said, "Son, you have always been my pride and joy. You must know that your mother always loved you and she gave a lot for you." I felt a tingle in my heart and remembered the current state of my family. I told my father, "But right now, our family is having a hard time. Mom has a hard life bringing me up alone. I always feel that I'm not doing enough to be able to contribute more to the family." My father smiled and shook his head, "Son, don't worry too much. You've already done a good job. You know what? I've been watching you all along. Your growth and progress makes me feel very happy." His words made me feel warm and comforted. I began to grumble a little about why my father had left me and my mother. My father looked calm as he said, "Son, Dad has always watched over you. Although Dad is gone, my love will always be with you. When you need it, just think of me, and I will be there to protect you." Still a little puzzled, I asked him, "But if you hadn't left, our lives would be better now, right? We wouldn't be as difficult as we are now." My father patted me gently on the shoulder and said, "Son, there is an end to human life. Everyone has his or her own mission in time. I once did all I could for you, and now you have to fight for yourself and your family. Mom needs you to take care of her, it's your responsibility. You have to be strong, and I believe you can do it." I asked my father, "Dad, can I stay here? Or bring Mom to heaven to be with us too?" My father looked at me quietly, then shook his head gently and said, "Son, you can't stay here, your time is not up yet. And your mother still needs you to take care of her on earth." I was a little confused and asked, "Why can't we get Mommy here too? It's so wonderful here, so we can be reunited as a family." My father sighed deeply and said, "Son, there are many things in this world that are beyond our control. Although heaven is a wonderful place, each of us has our own mission and responsibilities. Your mother needs you, and you can't give up that responsibility. And your time has not yet come, you must return to earth and fulfill your mission." Father also said, "Your future life is not so bad." Then a scene appeared before my eyes. I saw myself sitting at a spacious desk, dressed in a suit, confidently interacting with a client. The entire office was surrounded by tall floor-to-ceiling windows, and the sunlight poured in, making it seem extra bright and warm. My father gently patted my shoulder, smiled at me and said, "Son, this is your future life. You will become a successful businessman and live a happy life." I was also a little worried and asked, "Dad, will I always be this happy?" My father looked at me seriously and said slowly, "Son, life is like a long river, you will encounter many challenges and difficulties, but as long as you work hard, you will definitely get through. Do not be afraid of failure, failure is also a part of success. As long as you keep your confidence and courage, your future will definitely be brighter." I felt more motivated and confident after hearing my father's words. I asked my father, "What about my mother? Will she be happy too?" My father smiled and replied, "Of course, she will also lead a happy life. You will be her pride and joy. She will see you graduate, see you find a job you like, see you marry the person you love. She will be there for you through every important moment." Listening to my father's words, I felt a warmth in my heart. I imagined a future in which my mother would no longer worry about life and our family would be able to live happily together. I really hoped this would come true soon. My father's words seemed to have the power to foretell the future, and he led me to see the future scenario of my mother's life. I saw that my mother had her own flower store with many loyal customers. She had a smile on her face. Next to it was a beautiful garden where my mother was growing all kinds of flowers and vegetables, and many people came to enjoy it every day. It made me feel happy to see this scene. I am grateful to my father for showing me all this and letting me know that the future is no longer a distant dream, but something I can achieve through my own efforts. My father said to me, "It's time for you to go back." I knew that I had to go back. My mother needed me more. My father smiled, nodded to me, and disappeared from my sight. I felt a pang of loss, but also knew that this was a gift my father had left me to let me know that he was always there. I turned back to the angel and said, "When you return, your body will recover, you will have the opportunity to fulfill your dreams, and you will find that your life will be so much better." I nodded and looked at him gratefully, then he reached out his hand and gently touched my forehead. I felt a weak power flow through my body, and then I returned to the real world. When I opened my eyes, I found myself lying in a hospital bed. When my mother saw me wake up, she grabbed my hand excitedly and kept saying, "Son, you're finally awake." I felt her love and worry, and tears flowed out unconsciously. The doctors and nurses checked my body and confirmed that I had no serious injuries and just needed to rest. With my mother by my side, I gradually regained my health. My mother did rehabilitation exercises with me every day to help me regain my strength. When I returned home, I sat by the bedside and told my mother about my amazing experience. As she listened, she shed moving tears and finally hugged me in her arms. I saw my father in heaven, and he said we would all be happy in the future. I said softly to my mother. A smile appeared on my mother's face as she held my hand tightly and said, "What you said must be true. Son, I believe in you and your father's words, and we will definitely be happy in the future." Hearing these words from my mother, my heart also felt grounded and at ease. I knew that although my father had left us, he was always watching over us in heaven, making us feel incredibly warm and comforted.